Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's recovery. And I'm joined by the most amazing, good friend. I'd like to say one of my best friends, Blondey McCoy. Hi,
Hi.
how's it going?
Good. I'm happy. Thank you for asking me to do this.
Well,
I'm at work, so everyone's listening to me, but I suppose that's the point.
but I think one of the main reasons I asked you to do this is because I know you, I know your story, I know that you're so young and you are so creative that you choose not to drink or take drugs, and haven't. So, how long clean now are you?
I haven't drunk in 3 years, and I haven't done drugs in, well, I haven't done drugs in probably close to 5.
It's amazing.
A while.
You know what I mean? That's amazing. So why? Tell me, what was it like growing up for you?
Well, I just have, like you, and like probably a lot of the other people you've had on the show, and probably like a lot of people that have listened to the show, and I have an addictive personality, and before it was drugs, it's always been something. It's always, when I think back when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I would have no problem eating, especially when they were in the shiny gold foil, in the shiny purple foil. I'd have the 12-pack of dairy milk in one go, or the multi-pack of hula hoops, which would last a family a week. And no one told me not to, and not that I hold anyone accountable for it. I think if you're inclined to behave like that, then you're going to behave like that. If you have those kind of cravings, if you have a capability of eating that much, or smoking that much, or sniffing that much, you're going to do it whether someone kind of allows you to or not. But so when I was very, very young, I was maybe not consciously addicted, but would consume an abnormal amount of less harmful substances. And I think that it kind of only made sense that I graduated from chocolate bars onto cocaine.
Chocolate, the whole ethics behind chocolate. We eat chocolate because it makes us feel good. It releases a chemical in our brain of dopamine release, and that feeling of like, oh my God, I need more of this. And normal people, and I like to call them normal people, could put that in a drawer and think, oh, I'll have some of that tomorrow or whatever. Me, I'm the same as you. I would sit and I would eat and eat and eat until it's all gone. And then I'd think, oh, I need more of that. And I'd go out and get it.
I see those normal people. I've watched them closely, and I'm baffled by their behavior. I've never understood how you could not, if you like something, the way it works for you and me is to do so much of it to the point that you hate it, or are just flat out not allowed it anymore. If you like something, of course you have to ruin it for yourself. That's the thing.
100%.
Some things in life you have to establish a balance with, because I have the same problems with food now as I had with drugs. I have no routine or schedule, or I have no stability to my diet. But I can't just cut it out like I cut out drugs. But I'm very aware that it wasn't any one drug, any one way of releasing that chemical or any other chemical that I was into. It's just the way that I am. That's how I operate.
Yeah. So growing up with that whole, obsessive thinking and obsessive, personality disorder, as we like to call it. What was life like? Apart from the chocolate, how did you proceed from chocolate?
I guess that sort of obsessive personality thing has done me some favors as well in the other parts of my life, like being a skateboarder. It takes a certain type of addictive personality to do something like that, which involves falling over 99 times to get that one time, and think, oh, that one time was so fun, I'd like to do that for the next 10 years. So there's been benefits to feeling like that, and I think that a big part of recovery is recognizing that trait and using it to your advantage, thinking of it as a power rather than a disability.
When I was a kid, I used to skateboard. I told you this before. I had a skateboard, of course I had a skateboard. But, I used to skateboard, and every time I would fall off, and I'd always end up in hospital with either concussion, broken arms, broken wrist, anything I could possibly do to myself, I would fall off that skateboard and do. But I never ever thought, oh, I can't wait to get back on it.
We've talked about this in the past, and you enjoyed being in hospital for the attention, and which I understand as well.
So skateboarding was a ways and means for me to get into hospital and get the
But
attention that I so needed.
but I'm glad that you mentioned that about getting into hospital, because I suppose that probably was the next thing. That probably was the telltale sign that I was going to be a drug addict, besides like the classic spinning around in circles and eating chocolate. I then became very obsessed with skateboarding, not the most harmful substance to be addicted to. But I did get injured a lot. There was a time, for a long time I was more off. I had skated for longer with a broken bone in a cast than I had not. From the age of, I don't know, probably 13 to 18 or something, I just kind of consistently broke one week, this wrist and then that one and then this one and then that one. And it got to a point where I guess when you're younger, you don't feel so much pain anyway. But I do specifically remember breaking a wrist or getting injured and thinking, oh, good, I'll get the morphine. I really remember that. I really remember going to the hospital saying, I know what to say. I'll say, no, it's not affecting me at all. I need a bit more. I have that. And can I have the mask too? Just because, I got quite like there's easier ways of acquiring morphine.
When you were hanging out with all your skateboarder mates, your little skateboard mates as I call them, all your skateboarding gang, like literally, were they all big drinkers? Is it a big thing in within the skateboard scene to take drugs? Is it? I mean, most skateboarders I see, apart from Brandon Novak, obviously, but we've already done that one. But I mean, is it a big thing? Because they look pretty healthy to me.
Well, I think first of all, I think that in the UK, I mean, the legal drinking age is 18 in the UK. It's 21 in America. Obviously, that's ignored in both countries, obviously. But I think that generally people start drinking quite young. People start drinking and smoking quite young. I did when I was 12 or 13 or something. And so I think that's inexclusive to skateboarding in Britain. So I started drinking young, but the reasons why skateboarding led me to alcohol and drug abuse, it could be many reasons, but one of them is that it's not, one of the things which I liked most about it was that unlike going to school or anything else, you weren't just lumped with other people that were the same age as you or same background as you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, all of my best friends were in their, if not late 20s, then 30s and sometimes 40s. And they were all different walks of life, and it was all just, that one thing we had in common was skateboarding. So I suppose I was hanging around people that were old enough to be into drugs. It wasn't that I started skateboarding and me and a load of other 15-year-olds just started being drug addicts. I was hanging out with people that were already quite well versed in being drug addicts, and I was just kind of carrying on. Also, some people say, I didn't really think that at all when I look at pictures of me a few years ago, but people said that I looked not that young. So it wasn't like a lot of those.
You look about say that now, though. You still look.
Yeah, that's what I think. But I think as a disclaimer, I should say that a lot of the people that I hung around with and did drugs with when they were 40 and I was 15, for example, might not have known that I was 15 or something.
When you hit it, how did you hit it, and how hard was it at the first year of
well,
because when I first met you, you used to hang around the Cross Keys pub, right, in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
And when I first met you, I must say that I was introduced to you by a friend of ours, Gary, and who's not more than a friend of ours, but he's like my sponsor and whatever. But he introduced me. He went, "Oh, I'm not going to do a Blackburn accent," but he went, "I want you to meet this guy, Blondie. You're going to love him." And I was like, "Okay." And he went, "He's obsessed by the '80s," and I was like, "Right." And I met you, and straight away I was drawn to you, and it wasn't because of anything, but I think the main reason I was drawn to you is because you're very similar to me. You're such an addict, and it takes one to know one, and straight away we click straight away. And when I've been thinking about it over the last week or so about how much why we click so much, because we're so similar. We've had this conversation loads of times. Your thinking is like my thinking, and we have uncommon sense.
We are in the best position possible to give each other the advice that we don't want. and
Exactly. Always.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, in answer to your question, how hard I hit it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like immediately, really. I mean, for me, skateboarding. I said earlier that skateboarding introduced me to this new world where you knew people based on more than that you just walked around on the same bit of carpet or you were studying the same thing or anything like that. It introduced me to London, really, and it introduced me to a culturally diverse group of people. But I was still actually, believe it or not, quite shy. For quite a long time, I didn't really say much. I wanted attention, and I loved skating, and I didn't mind being watched skating. But other than that, in my life, I was actually relatively shy, and it wasn't. And so for me, drinking and particularly doing cocaine was what opened me up and made me feel like I had something interesting to say.
When you did cocaine, did it actually make you more chatty, or did it make you go introverted? It made you more outspoken?
Made me about as extroverted as I am now. So I kind of feel like sometimes, for a while I thought, I really haven't done coke in ages, but I do still seem to think that what I have to say is far more important than anyone else, even though I haven't done it. I kind of feel like this is actually the way I am naturally, and doing cocaine was just what kind of came into my life at a time when I would naturally be a bit timid and just accelerated that process. But for a long time, as you will understand, it felt more than empowering. It felt like that was, for me, I remember the first time I did it and feeling what to me felt like comfortable in my own skin for the first time.
Yeah, I can totally understand it. I mean, for me, that wasn't the case. That happened like about 6 months into it. I started to feel comfortable. At first, I really didn't like the feeling. I didn't like where it took me to, that place of paranoia, because I didn't have to wait to get paranoid. I was already paranoid. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. So that just highlighted everything. And then, and then the more I took it, the more accustomed and more comfortable I got with it. And then that's when you couldn't shut me up. Do you get what I mean?
I do get what you mean, yeah.
So how old were you when it got to that point where you just thought, I can't do this?
Well, with coke, it got to that point I like a lot of things in my life, which is short.
23 now, right?
23 now, but there's a lot of things which I can like barely remember, if not for being on drugs, then just for like being at a time that I just like don't care to remember anything from. But I do know some things for certain reasons. Like I know that the gallery that I moved into and that I was living at when I was doing drugs the most, and when I was doing the most coke for sure, was in 2013. I only know that because there's a picture of me talking, surely about nothing, in front of the one window of the gallery. Other than that, it was just a blacked out warehouse, and even the window was like had bars on it. But there was a poster on the window of the show that was on at that time, and that was in December of 2012. So it was in 2013. So I would have been about 15.
So how does a 15-year-old think?
GCSE level.
I know, right? How does a 15-year-old who's taking GCSE levels in cocaine suddenly think, I don't want to do this anymore? What got to that point where you just thought, I can't do this? This isn't the life that I want.
Well, a lot.
At 15, I was just getting started. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know, and I know. I'm grateful to have been in such peculiar circumstances as I was, but there were a lot of things in my life which were not going well, like in the traditional sense. Like I was not going to school. School was saying, if you don't come in, we want you to come in, because I was always good when I was there and I got on with the teachers and stuff. But they said, if you don't come in, we're going to have to ask you to leave. And I my mum allowed me to just say, well, I'll just leave then and go to another school that is fine with me not coming in. But in a lot of the more, in the traditional sense, my life wasn't being set up for success. But in a way that a lot of people wouldn't understand, in a way that I'm very surprised that my mum understood, or maybe I just told her so little about it. Maybe she just felt it was futile to question it, in ways that perhaps a less easy to understand. It was going well. I was getting paid quite a lot of money to model for Supreme. I was, at 15, I was going to Japan to model for like skateboard companies and getting paid in cash and just like nothing to spend it on really other than drugs. And that money really doesn't actually surprisingly come into it that much, because as long as you want something, you will find either the money yourself or find someone that you don't dislike strongly enough to not want to do drugs with them and let them chip in.
Totally.
But in one way, my life wasn't very on the rails, and in another way, it was. And I had my company Thames, which I have now, but it was really just at the beginning, and it was kind of going well. It lacked any sort of structure whatsoever. But I had business partners for a long time, and a long time in my by my standards, and they kind of. Here's what happened. I went on a skate trip. I left a drug trip, as in a trip with the specific intention just of doing drugs, to go last minute on a skate trip. And when I got on the skate trip, there was a new team manager or whatever. And I don't want to, maybe I should talk so openly about this, but basically he had been told and was telling other people on the team not to give me any drugs. He's basically telling everyone other than me that I wasn't to be allowed any drugs. And I only really found this out late in the evening after kind of orchestrating a whole a drug dropping off. And I was like, and they said, we're not going to give it to you. So I was like, what? So I went to it was in Paris. It was in one of those smoking areas where like the building is so sacred, they don't want people out in front of it. They built a glass box in the center of the club, which is a castle, to smoke in. And I just went up to everyone. And the closest I could get to what I wanted was MDMA. So I just bought like 3 grams of MDMA or something out of spite. I was just fucking so pissed off. You won't give me Coke. I'm just going to do 3 grams of MDMA out of spite. I'm going to offer it to you. And when you say, yeah, I would actually like some, I'm going to say, you can't have it. So that happened. And then it was kind of like a 2-week-long skate trip when it was really, really difficult for me to get drugs. And it was really kind of awkward. It was a bit of a what's it called? An intervention without involving me at all. Anyway, when I came back, Gareth is one of the 2 people that were my ex-business partners. I'm forever thankful for him saying to me, he's South African, saying, Blondie, we're going to do things together and it's going to be great. But I really suggest that you stop doing drugs. And he didn't force me. But I thought,
you do both so good. I'm sorry, but you do.
I've spent enough time with him. But he, he didn't force me to, and we were doing it together anyway. We had this idea that he and Palace would take on a lot of the more difficult things of running a company. And he didn't say that we're not going to do it unless you pull your act together. It was more of a suggestion.
If someone had tried to get hold of you and did an intervention in the sense of locking you in a room or sending you to rehab, that wouldn't have worked. That wouldn't have worked. For me, that would never have worked if someone did that to me. For me, it has to come. I have to have at least 40% of the idea myself. Okay, you know what? You may be right. This might work for me. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens, because as addicts, we don't want to be told what to do, let alone being told to stop drugs and being told you're a mess.
No, because I mean, it's not like you don't get told in the first place that it's going to be. It's not like people say, "Oh, try it. It might be nice for you." People tell you, "Don't do heroin. You're going to really love it and get addicted to it." An addict generally thinks of themselves as a self-sufficient person or in control.
Always. But if someone offers you 3 different avenues, like, okay, if you take this, you're going to have an okay time. You'll be all right. But if you take this one, you're going to be so out of it, blah, blah, blah. But if you take this one, you're likely going to fuck everything up and you're going to end up, God knows where. Which one would you go for? Always the third option. But never the other 2, because I think, oh, that sounds really appealing.
Yeah.
And that's where we go. And when we get given that chance of like that moment of clarity where we think, okay, I can change this. Do you get what I mean? but it has to come from us. We have to want it.
Yeah, well, he did the way that it was handled, the way that conversation was had was definitely, it was definitely a nice, it was a polite suggestion. And when I expressed interest in that, and I thought, you're probably right, I have got quite a bad problem.
But I mean, how does an 18-year-old turn around to all his mates and say, I'm not doing drink or drugs anymore?
What happened was I stopped doing drugs. I actually went to an NA meeting, and it didn't really work for me. I mean, I suppose it did in one way. I've only ever been to a few AA or NA meetings ever, but this first one I went to stuck with me the most because I was there, and it was kind of last minute. I hadn't really looked into it. I just thought, oh, there's one happening. It's like you're never more than 5 meters away from an AA meeting in London. And I was like, oh, there's one happening right there now, so I'll go to that.
Funny that, isn't it?
And it's amazing. It's great. But I went to it, and it was not a. I don't know. Are there ones that are kind of more like youth clubs, or
yeah, there is. There's so many different types of meeting, and I think what the good thing about recovery now and people coming into recovery is a much younger generation coming in. So I go to some meetings and I think, fucking hell, they're really young in here. But bearing in mind, I still think I'm 16. But you get what I mean? I look around the room and I think, and straight away my head will say, you don't belong in here. They're all really young. You've got nothing in common with them. Hello, we're in AA or NA. Of course, I've got everything in common. I'm an addict and I'm an alcoholic. There you go. What more do I need in common? But my head will tell me, nah, they're a bit too young for you, this crew. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I had sort of, the opposite of that. I went in and I thought, well, everyone here is
at God's waiting. It's like God's waiting room, right?
At death's door, yeah. No, I just thought everyone in here is like a normal age, and I'm clearly quite young to be here. But I didn't really feel awkward being there because of that. I just listened to people sharing, and I thought it was a great experience, and I'm all for it. Actually, it just happened to not be the way that I did it.
No.
But what I listened to, it grounded me in a major way, because a lot of the people I listened to were. I just remember someone saying, they haven't done drugs in this long, and that's great. But they were a cleaner, and I was just thinking, wow, like this is this person's normal life. On the outside, doesn't necessarily look that exciting. It's not, and I don't know, maybe it is, like everyone's lives are different, but it's hard for me to say, it really made me think, fucking hell, if a lot of these people were to quit drugs, they would just go back to a life which seems like hell to me, which I can't even comprehend living without drugs. I can't even comprehend doing that life with drugs. So I'm here, some kid in the prime of my life, and if I quit drugs, not only do I get to be proud and have all of the benefits of not being on drugs, I can have a career as a skateboarder. I can design and sell clothes for a living. I can make art shows and art books and all these things, and all the while be conscious of it and of all the emotions attached. So I thought, I really owe it to it. It grounded me, and it made me think, wow, I really owe it to myself, because everyone could do, every addict could do with not being an addict, but I had so much waiting for me on the other side. I had such a life that I was throwing away.
I think the good thing about it is that you caught it at the right moment in time, where it didn't go to the next stage. If it had gone to the next stage, fuck skateboarding, fuck designing, fuck all of that, that would have gone out the window. That would have been your journey. But because you nipped it, that's an amazing thing. And I want to talk to you about, because your recovery isn't like my recovery and a lot of other people's recovery, apart from the fact that we're clean and we're sober. But you don't work a 12-step program. And I kind of think it's really important for somebody to have a voice in this, because there are more ways than one to stay clean. For me, my 12-step program works for me because that's what I was gifted. And, for me, that's what I continue to gift on to other people. But for you, at such a young age, to have, to come from that and to go on to where you've gone to sober is a massive achievement. Not working a 12-step program. And I don't know if it's because you're a little superhero or what, but it's remarkable because also a lot of people that I meet that don't work a program are fucking nightmares. They're the biggest nightmares because they don't, when there's a saying that we say that when you take the alcohol out of fruitcake, what are you left with? Fruitcake. And you're not fruitcake. Do you go on stage here? And as a friend of yours, you're one of the most smartest and brightest, and I'm going to use the word, and it's not patronizing, kids I know. Seriously, you have this thing about you that's just like on a completely different level. And I would never ever in a million years thought that guy used to drink or take drugs. I know you're an addict, but I would never have thought that you'd actually gone down that path. So
that's one of the nicest things you've ever said to me, Tony, that I'm not a fruitcake. Coming from you, I really appreciate that. No, I know what you mean, and a lot of people have said that to me, actually, that they can't imagine me doing drugs and drinking. And actually, I feel like I've reached a good level in my recovery, because I can barely imagine myself doing drugs and drinking. Not that it doesn't every now and then appeal to me. It's not that I'm a little superhero at all. It's that I've been blessed with a creative outlet, and so I had something to do ready, and I was actually already doing it when I was on drugs. Yeah. But a lot of the people I speak to that get sober, it's normally like the first month is, this is cool, I'm not drinking, this is lol. And then it's like month 2 is like, okay, starting to realize why I need to drink, starting to realize some things about myself. And then it's by month 3 they normally speak to me and say, I haven't found my purpose in life. I haven't become religious or sporty or anything. I'm just bored. And I think there's this real misconception that it's like the day that you stop drinking, you find something new to channel all that energy which you'd been throwing away into. One thing worth noting about me quitting outside of the 12-step program is that it's a difference socially. I feel like the way that when people feel like there's 2 ways of doing it. You can either quit via the program and inherit a whole new group of friends like you have, where you can't walk down the road without saying hello to someone in like every 5 meters anonymously, or you can quit without the program and lose all of your friends, or like at least it become very difficult. Because I mean, it's true. It's like, you do realize in the act of going sober who you are really friends with, who you can only really stand, can only really bear to be around when you're both out of your minds, or who you really shared nothing at all in common with other than a mutual appetite for self-destruction. And it's a bit of a sad thing, because especially when I was so young, I thought, wow, I've just like thought that a few people I was better friends with than I was, to be honest. And when I do see those, I haven't had any fallings out from stopping doing drugs, but there were people that were a big part of my life that I just don't see anymore.
I had some of those friends.
That changes you a lot. That forces you to, at least the way that I did it. I wish I had kind of been prepared or known how to navigate that, because that got me quite down for a long time. A lot of the time I thought, why can't I just either go to the pub or like go, because I'm not going to go to like a warehouse or like be sat around a coffee table in a warehouse at like 5 a.m. and not be on drugs. I'm not going to do that. There's like no point in anyone doing that. But it just made me a bit angry at myself. I thought, why can't I at least just dabble, or at least just do it and not care? But I can't. I know what's right for me, and sometimes that's not the easiest thing.
Well, I mean, I sometimes watch you, and via social media sometimes. I see you doing karaoke, and I see you playing pool. I see you doing all the normal stuff that you would normally do when you were on drugs anyway. Like people like myself, I wouldn't dream of going for karaoke sober. I'd only be in there if I was like on my last legs and it was like, it was the last place that was selling sake. Do you know what I'm saying, Jack? That would be the only reason I would be in there.
I only realised how good it was sober.
That's what I'm saying, John. But, you
I
know,
think that doing something like going to karaoke, doing things like that, they're silly, but they are actually things which require some confidence, and those are sort of milestones in your sobriety. To me, sobriety is inner power and is a feeling of comfort in your own skin and confidence. And for me, I couldn't do karaoke or even really like sing out loud, not with a microphone, when I was on drugs. It took me being off drugs. It took a gradual transition period of me going, I actually can walk without this crutch.
Yeah.
In fact, I can do more than that. I can run. And then I go, well, I can actually do karaoke and things which other people, including myself, wouldn't even want to do on drugs. And so things like that, silly as they are, become milestones in the levels of your self-confidence. And to me, that's the greatest reward of sobriety, other than the health.
The majority of your friends are in recovery, and I think that's quite a blessing as well. I think that, you know, because people always go, don't you ever, when you go out to pubs, or I go out to bars, or I'm at work, or I'm in social environments, people say, don't you ever miss it? Don't you ever get tempted? And for me, it's like, I don't get tempted because I know what it's going to do to me and what it's done to me. So therefore, I know my life is so much better without that stuff. Yeah. But someone of your age, to be around people that drink and drugs and have fun, you know, is a whole different ball game altogether. Because, you know, it's like I'm at the end of the road of that. You were at the beginning. Do you get what I'm saying to you?
Yeah. It can
great strength.
Well, it isn't easy sometimes, to be honest, and socially that is, and it can be quite. If anyone is watching this and thinking of quitting outside of the program, it would warn that it can be quite an isolating thing. And if you can choose to surround yourself with people, full stop, but social interaction, because it's just the going from non-stop talk, even though none of it is, even though you're in a circle, everyone's talking and no one's listening to each other, it's still there. To go from that to kind of silence, I mean, it gives you a lot of time and energy to put into things which you're, you know, which kind of help build you as a person and things that you want to do, your interests. But it's also, it was difficult for me. And more than that, and I think that you can relate to this, I know that you can relate to this as well, Tony, is you attach quite a lot of importance to relationships then, because the relationships you do forge, for better or for worse, you attach a lot of meaning to, and a lot of you expect a lot out of people, and it's just not really fair. People become like drugs, and you need. They do,
but that's it. We use people, places, and things, and when we get sober, I'm very lucky. See, I wouldn't say lucky, but, you know, I'd say more blessed in the sense that I when I came out of rehab, I had no friends apart from the person that stayed with me through all of it. All of my other friends were like rats up drain pipes. They'd gone. I was no longer any use to them because I was no longer the supplier of the house to do the drugs in and the party in. And the party was over for them. But for me, the party was just beginning, and I could go to one meeting. I came out of rehab that evening. I went to a meeting. I came out with 8 or 9 new friends. See, that's how that program works. But for someone who, as you said, it could be so lonely because you don't have that access to that.
I just didn't. I'm trying to think now, as we're having this conversation, why I didn't quit in the same way that you did. Could have been for any number of reasons, but I do feel that it's necessary for me to say that I don't advise any one way of quitting over another. What I did worked for me, but it wasn't that easy, actually. What you did worked for you. I think, you know, the point of us doing this is to just show that there are
other avenues. I like to say, some people need meetings and some people need beatings. And I use this saying quite a lot because it's not, I don't mean a physical beating, but I mean a beating of life.
You can do that too, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Don't get me wrong, there's so many people I'd like to smash. But
Yeah. Some people need beatings, and it's got nothing to do with addiction at all. It's just,
100%.
it's completely, it's just a fact.
Anyone in the street right now not wearing a mask. So what's life like now for you? Because I know how amazing your life is and how much fun you have. I mean, I've been away with you on trips around the world, and we went to LA, blah, blah, blah. And I've had so much fun with you. So much, like complete real belly laughter. Do you know what I mean? Normally at someone else's expense. You know, no, not really, but you know what I mean? It's always real laughter.
Yeah, sometimes at someone else's expense. But I honestly have more fun now than I did then. So for sure, there's no question about it. And like you, I can really relate to what you said when people ask you, do you ever miss it? It's very rare that I have times when I think, well, it's 9 o'clock in the evening now. I've got to lay out this magazine and build this website and do a load of preparations to launch some clothes in the morning, this, that, and then I've got to film a skate park by next week. Sometimes I do think, you know, I'd really like just a really long line of Coke and beer and a fag. It's true every now and then, but more often than not, I do feel like what you said, because I know myself and because I know there's no such thing as one cigarette or one drink or one line or anything. I just know myself, and even that, knowing myself as well as I know myself, no matter how hard it was to get to this point, is like a God-given gift to me. It's the thing which I'm most appreciative for in my whole life. Knowing myself, not just knowing my limits and my capabilities, but knowing my strengths too, and knowing my characteristics and feeling and knowing my character, really feeling the confidence to be myself. It was my second point, which I forgot when we were talking about it. When my second reason for why it was easy for me to get into drugs when I started skateboarding was that skateboarding is the one sort of sport. It's the only thing I can think of which qualifies as a subculture as much as it does qualify as a sport. I have an athlete's contract. I skate for Adidas, but there's no one in the skateboarding world that's condemning anyone for doing too many drugs. It's encouraged, really. I mean, if like someone just is a complete wreck and like wants to jump off a building with their skateboard, it's like filmed. It's like, it's not, no one goes, oh my God, this is a huge cry for help. People go, oh, he's a secret genius. It's like, yeah, because he's keeping it pretty secret because I can't fucking tell. You know, it's like, so there is that that's worth mentioning. It's like, I wouldn't necessarily have made the decisions I made or matured to be the person that I am now, and I'm still maturing, if I weren't sober.
And I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think, right, that you've changed your holics? Do you think you've gone from alcoholic to workaholic?
I think that I naturally do that.
Yeah.
But because of my awareness of it, you know, it was easier for me to quit alcohol because I knew that I was a drug addict. Exactly. I know my behavior. I noticed. I was patting myself on the back for a couple of years for not doing coke, as I should have been. But then I thought, well, I am still drinking every hour of the day. And then I thought, now it's time to get rid of that. And then 3 years on from that, I thought, you know what, if I can stop doing coke and I can stop drinking, and if I have to stop doing coke and I have to stop drinking, then I must be able to quit cigarettes as well. It gets easier. You recognize the patterns in your behavior, and I would be lying if I didn't say that it was reflective of other parts of my life that weren't necessarily so immediately or so obviously harmful. So absolutely, you do graduate from an alcoholic to a workaholic, from an addict to an alcoholic. Yeah,
I mean, for me today, Lo, you know, 13 and a half years clean, working a program, I still use I'm busy. I'll be like, oh, I'm too busy. You know, my behavior goes off the rails because I'm so busy. And I use that as an excuse to have a bad attitude, a bad temper. I use it the same way as I do drugs, the same way as I do any other of my other addictions, that when they rear their ugly head, they rear their ugly head. But I can use on that without knowing. And then what happens is by day 3 or day 4, it will kick in. I think, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? Literally, because I go into flow with stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I'll have a project on, and I want it to be the best project. Everything about it has to be better than everything else. And and literally I can get so lost in it, and I won't sleep at night. I'll be worrying, the anxiety, the adrenaline, all of that stuff that I used to get from drugs, I get from that project.
Yeah.
That's when I'm in my danger zone, because that's when I have to sit back.
I see you in that, and you see me in that, and I find that more difficult to manage, actually, because I mentioned food earlier. And that's just food and work are two of many things which are harder to control, because you have to control them. You can't just cut them off.
No.
It's not like you can not only can you stop doing heroin, you can stop putting yourself in an environment where there's heroin just over there. Exactly. Things like food and work are not necessarily bad things at all. And for people like you and me who struggle to find a balance, it takes a consciousness of that. It takes a knowing of yourself and a constant monitoring of your behavior.
I love you. And I think that,
too.
The fact that, you've learned to love yourself, and I've been around you when you're not loving yourself, and the love starts to kick back in. I see it in you. I see that glint in your eye, and I just think, oh yeah, he's back in the room. Do you get what I mean? And that's recovery. That is recovery, because we all have bad days. We all have days that our thinking's slightly off key, but you know what? It kicks back into shape. It goes straight back onto track. And I observe that in you a lot. And I just think that when I see you being Blondie and doing what you do, it's an amazing feeling for me just to watch, because I know where you've come from, and I know, how hard it is for you. And I just think sometimes he does that without a program. That's incredible.
Well, I really appreciate. That's so kind of you to say all of that, and that is part of the reason why I do what I do. Obviously, I do what I do because I enjoy it, and somehow I'm managing to make a living out of it. But it honestly is. How can I say this? I'm conscious of having an audience for some reason. And I'm grateful that it's a young audience, and I feel a responsibility to be not sharing things that they need to hear or that they will agree with or anything. I feel the only responsibility I feel is to do something which I love doing now, which is being myself.
Yeah.
And because for me, it's the saddest thing in the world for anyone to not feel that they can be themselves. So there's few people that I see, and whether I even like what they're doing or not, doesn't come into it when I can see that they're being authentic and being true to themselves, at the risk of being laughed at or criticized, because you are. If you put yourself in a position to be praised, you're also opening up yourself to criticism, and it's a thing. And I think that kind of that need for that human wanting to be accepted, if not liked, has mutated over the last 60 or 70 years because of a lot of reasons, change in the style of advertising, the rise of pop culture as we know it, amongst a million other things. I feel like that wanting to be accepted, which I think is fair enough, has mutated into a need to be validated. And I think that's a real threat to our happiness. I think it's a threat to real creative individuality. I think it's a real threat to a lot of things. And I think that I feel my responsibility is to go against that grain and say that you can just be you. And people may well not like you at all, but you will be better off for it in the end, being you.
I think sometimes being you is enough sometimes. And I think that's an achievement to
seems to me that a lot of there's bigger problems happening in the world than there are in either of our lives, but in the world that we live in, a lot of problems seem to stem from people not saying what they really mean and being who they really are. I just think that we'd all be happier if we could just accept each other for who we are rather than trying to fit into what we think each other should be. And I think that drug addiction, alcohol abuse, even like compulsive consumerism, all stem from that same insecurity of not feeling enough, of not feeling like you're good enough for other people. And so part of the reason why I do what I do is because I like it, and part of the reason is because I feel a duty to do what I like, and in the hopes that other people will do the same.
Well, I just think that a lot of young kids are going to watch this, and I think a lot of young kids are going to get so much from it, because there are so many avenues to go down in life, and some of us go down avenues and don't ever, we crash in those avenues. And I think that your story is remarkable in the sense that at your age that you've conquered it and overcome it, and you have such a clarity around it, which is great. It really is. And I just think that this is going to help so many people. I just want to thank you for doing it.
Oh, well, I really want to thank you for asking me. I hope that people like it.
Of course, people.
I've enjoyed it. I like talking to you, whether the camera's on or off.
Exactly right. So I'm going to ask you, because, being a fucking DJ that I am, the one tune, and I know all the tunes that you love, but the one tune.
5 of them.
No, not 5. One that you go to is your go-to tune where you're feeling flat, that is going to lift you.
To be honest, you know what the thing is? There's only, me, there's only a few people I actually really like, and those that I like, I really like. One of the groups which I forget about, which aren't in the 80s at all, which I sometimes forget about and then come back to and think, oh my God, I'm just literally thankful for their existence, is ABBA. Because I just think they sound like angels. And I also, kind of relevant to our conversation we were just having, because they were not caring about not looking cool long before I was born. So they're the original kind of
which ABBA track?
Pop music person.
I used to have a club called ABBA on Tuesday nights in London. Every Tuesday night, yeah. George Michael used to DJ it.
Oh, you did tell me that before.
Yeah, him and Linda Evangelista used to come down every other week and DJ. It was really funny.
There's so many.
Let's choose one. Stop dragging it out.
All right, well, just to use the winner takes it all then. It's not the most feel-good one, but it is a great one. Can I tell you a fun fact about it before we go?
Of course you can. Yeah, go on.
Bjorn and Benny, they wrote that song for Frida and Anna Fried to sing. I think Bjorn wrote it for Agneta to sing about their breakup from her perspective, about him being the winner and taking it all. And next time you listen to that, next time you're in a cafe that's playing Magic and only plays that every other song, you just listen to the lyrics, bearing that in mind, and think about sort of how cruel it is. But also know this, that she said that was one of her favourite songs to perform live because it felt the realest.
Well, I'd like to end it on that, because the winner does take it all.
On that fun fact.
On that fact, the winner always takes it all. And it's about sticking with the winners in this game. It really is. Love you, man. God bless.
All right. I love you too. Thanks for talking to me.
Later.
See you later.
Bye.